Things you need. You need your design. Okay, hopefully you finish that up. I can make copies of that in a minute. Okay, if it's your finished one. You're going to need a plate, or actually two, because you're going to make two of these. Okay, so we'll have these out here. You're going to need to choose your clay. There's two types of clay you can use. We have our standard B-mix, which is a white clay. It's smooth, and it's a great clay. And then we have our, it's called buff or plain. I call it speckled. It's a little bit darker. When it fires, it has little speckles that come through a little bit. And it, where there's no glaze, like if there's just a clear glaze, it's kind of a toasty brown. So it's not white, it's kind of a toasty brown. And I'm going to do one of each, so you can kind of see those, but they're both good clays. You're going to need a slip, and you're going to choose. All these slips are back. See that big stack of bins? They're right back there. Please, when you grab them, you can carry them by the bucket with your hand underneath. Sorry, by the handle. If you grab this and swing this around, that's going to snap, and then you're going to put black slip everywhere. Okay, so don't. Just carry that nice and carefully. If you can't get to it carefully, ask somebody to help you. Okay. The slip I'm going to use today is 6300 or just black. One of those two. Okay, and you can choose any of those slips. And I'm going to cut off my bag. Now, as you're working, please make sure you're not wasting clay. Wasting clay means you're taking it out and it's just sitting there and it's drying out for no reason. Make sure you're cutting it off, wedging it up when needed, putting it back in the bag. Go from there. Okay. When we cut from the bag, I'm going to give you a couple of hints here. When it's fresh from the bag, usually we have these little inconsistencies. You can just tap those down. When we cut from the bag, what we don't want to do is cut little thin strips, because then you're going to have to wedge it up. And when I'm making a plate, I don't need to wedge this up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here and pick something about 3 times as thick as I want it to be. And the thickness of our plate should be about this. Okay, it shouldn't be thinner than this, and it shouldn't be thicker than that. That would be a little bit too thick for a plate, at least this size of a plate. If it was a big platter, you could probably do it that thick. Okay, so we'll be looking for something like that. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go about 3 or 4 sizes bigger. I'm going to take my wire tool, line it up, put my thumb on the back, and pull with just one hand towards my thumb, and I get a fairly uniform cut. If you come up here and cut this and cross your hands, you don't get a uniform cut. So try to pay attention to that. If you are going to wedge this up or use it for another reason, still don't come in here and cut. It's kind of a pain. Come in here and cut like a little rectangle out. It's going to make your life a whole lot easier, maybe. Okay, so we're going to cover that up and put it down there for now. And I'm going to throw this out. So if you've never thrown out a slab or it's been a while, first thing I do is I kind of warm up my clay. Make sure I have a nice clean area, and then I'm going to start to drop this down. It's going to come down and towards me. Down and towards me. And when I throw out a slab, I always get my width first. So if I'm making a plate, I now have enough to cover my plate plus my edges, right? And then I'm going to rotate it and get the rest. Okay. and that should be good. We got that there. If you need to or want to, you can get it mostly out. You can take these measuring sticks and the rolling pins are back over here in a box back here. And you can grab those. Please put them back when you're done with them. And we're going to start in the middle and push that out just a little bit and pull towards me. And that'll make my plate about that thick. Okay. Don't start with it thick and try to thin it out with a rolling pin. Okay, you're going to challenge yourself probably. Just throw it out a bunch first. Go from there. Okay, we're going to take our plate. We're going to take a needle tool, and I'm going to cut this straight up and down. I use a needle tool over any other tool because when I'm cutting around something that's circular, every edge on my needle tool is the same. Where if I use an X-Acto knife or a fettling knife or any straight blade, I have to turn the tool itself. I don't have to turn my needle tool. So if I'm going to do a circle here, I have to turn the tool. It's just a preference for me. And then I'm going to take this, I'll take this off, wedge this up. Where does it go? Back in the bag. Okay. Please make sure you're closing up the bags. And then I'm going to clean up my edges. I'm going to do that by just barely pinching on the edge with my index finger and my thumb, taking these little clay crumbs off. You can use a sponge. I prefer my fingers on this. Okay, take the time now. It'll save you headache later. Flip it over, check. Do that on both sides. Okay. Now, with your design, again, I can make copies of yours if you want. You're going to make 2 plates, and you're going to start them both today. A reason for 2, and starting them today is if one of them warps, one of them cracks, one of them, something massive goes wrong with them, you don't have to completely start over to just pick up where you kind of just pick up where you left off, right? I'm going to just cut around this circle a little bit. I don't need to cut the whole thing. You can, but I don't need to. So back to the 2 plates. That's why you should have copies of your design, because as we press on this, we ruin them a little bit. And you're going to want to have one as reference when you're doing it, to remember what you were trying to accomplish. Okay, I put my pattern on now because when I bend it, it's a lot harder to put your pattern on with the paper. Okay, something for you. You can use a mechanical pencil, you can use a regular pencil, or you can use a colored pencil. It's soft. And I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to trace my patterns. And you want to push hard enough that you're going to leave a decent line, but not so hard that you're poking through the paper. I still don't recommend freehanding these. You can freehand some of the things, but if you do too much, you tend to get off a little bit when it comes to like how crisp and clean your piece can be. Now, if you've done this a bunch of times, you could probably freehand it. Okay, some of you are going to press and work slower. Your paper is going to stick to your clay. Before you put on slip, you should go back, hit it with a hairdryer so you can pop that paper off because it's going to stick. So we're going to come in here. If you want to make this a little easier as you're tracing, if you put this on a board, we're not putting it on the plate yet, if you put it on a board, you can spin that board instead of just your hands or the clay. I'm not going to put all the information on here. Every one of you is going to have a little bit different path when it comes to this project. Okay, I'm going to pull that off. And if you look at it, you can see the lines. Okay, so they should be deep enough to see. That way when we put some slip on it, it'll drop down just a little bit. Here's one I did last class. You can still see the lines a little bit. Okay, that way when it's dry, I'll be able to come in and start scraping that. You can see that. Okay, we have 3 ways we can put this into the plate. And you can slip it before or after, but if you're going to do it this way, you need to slip it after. So I'm going to put it on here. Okay, one way to do it is to just drop it, and that'll sink it a little bit. Okay, the bottom will be slightly flat, but it'll be just a nice curve, and you can choose that. You can choose not to drop it at all, and it can just be a nice curve. This other way is what I'll do is I'll take a sponge that's soft. It doesn't need to be wet, and I'm going to push down into this little recessed area right here. Okay, so I can create this plate shape. And you can decide what to do. You can keep it so that the rim is kind of pointed out, or you can come in here and you can push that down a little bit. You choose. Okay, now we're going to take a paintbrush. We'll do a black one. And you're going to take your slip. If the slip if it looks mixed up, it'll look mixed up if there's not water on the top. So this was all used last class period. Any paintbrush will do. If you're going to go for details, I would recommend doing your sgraffito first and then come in and painting on your details later so you don't kind of mess things up. So we're going to come in here. I'm just going to paint this on. I don't know if I like this paintbrush. So we're going to put one coat. You can paint the edges if you want. It's up to you. Okay, and we're going to let that sit. There's a couple of brush marks, but you can still see where I made the indent. Okay. Here's some time frames for you on this. You shouldn't put your project in a bag when it's shiny, because that will stick to the bag. So by the end of class, you're going to need to hit it with the hairdryer. So I'd stick this in a bag. It's wet, but it's not shiny. Okay, so it's not going to stick as much. If it does stick a little bit, we can touch it up later. Okay, I'll set this aside. I'm going to do this other one real quickly. Looks like somebody put B-mix in with my speckled clay. Yeah, so you can use underglaze, so do your sgraffito first, and then you can come back in and do underglaze painting, washes, whatever you want. And we'll kind of talk about that a little bit next week as well. So yeah, if you want, like if mine, I can scrape off the white parts, and if I want it to go and have yellow on there or whatever, I can go in and paint that. This size. You just use these. If there's something specific you want to do, you can come find me and we'll talk through it. But yeah, this is the form we're going to use for most of our plates. All right, we're going to cut the chunk off here. This speckled clay is more firm. It's been sitting over there for, I want to say, like a year and a half. So it's a little bit more firm. So make sure you warm it up a little bit. Make sure you move it away from the wet spots. Okay, back to the requirements of what you need to do and make. You need to make 2. You only need to fire 1. You can fire both, so you choose. But again, the reason we're making 2 is if we're starting to go along and then all of a sudden one of them warps a lot or one of them cracks or it just whatever. You don't have to stress too much about it. You can just move over to the other plate. You do not have to use both kinds of clay. You can do the same pattern on both, or you can do different patterns. You choose. Again, I don't recommend freehanding. When we freehand on clay, clay doesn't react the same way paper and pen does. Okay, transfer our image. I'm not going to do as much. I think you get it. I think for a lot of you though, the last class got a lot of the paper stuck because they were pushing down way too hard. So make sure you're just barely pushing on this. If you have any downtime today, you should pull out your scratching tile, your sgraffito tile, and mess around with that, play around with that.
More of the scratch tiles.
Yeah, there's some more up in this bin right here. And again, for tonight, make sure you get on Google Classroom. We have that. Set it on our plate. You're going to keep it on the plate because it will hold its shape. If you take it off the plate, it's going to want to flop, or like one side flops and one side stays up. Put on some of this. This is dark blue, 6300. It goes on this color, but it comes out this dark color when it gets glazed, fired and glazed. This will be put back with the slips. We made these last semester. Yeah, so we take our slip, we mix it up, we strain it, and then we add mason stains to it, and then I test them to see how they fire.
What was the inspiration to the names?
The numbers?
Yeah.
The numbers are the number of that I ordered the mason stains.
Oh.
So 6306 is a standard mason stain number in the ceramic industry.
Oh, okay.
So you could order a 6306 Mason stain and it's gonna come out that color.
Oh,
If you mix in the same amount that I mixed in. And mine was more of a guess. It's like, that looks like enough instead of a measured approach.
okay.
So these are a one-off kind of a
Yeah.
slips. Okay, so I'm gonna leave that there. Lid back on. What other questions do you have? Okay, real quickly, a couple things for you. If you have a design you want me to make copies of, bring them and set them right here. I'll make those copies right now. Clean up your areas when you're done. Do your scratching. Wash your paintbrushes when you're done. Your table should be fairly clean when we're done. And then I'll be around to help you.